There comes a moment in your life when God starts moving in ways that don't need your explanation, because the transformation speaks for itself. And I believe somebody in this room is right on the edge of that moment. You've spent so much time trying to justify your growth to people who were never assigned to understand it. You've poured energy into proving what God already approved. But hear me, this is the season where you stop explaining and start trusting, where you stop performing and start aligning, because when God is the one elevating you, humility isn't weakness, it's strategy, it's protection, it's power. So if you're ready, really ready to step into a place where you focus on God, stay grounded, and win in a way that doesn't need applause, then let's go there. Let's talk about what happens when you surrender the need to be seen so you can finally be sent. When you stop explaining yourself to people, you stop giving them authority over your journey. There is a quiet shift that happens in your spirit when you realize that the need to be understood has been slowing you down more than any obstacle ever could. You begin to see that your calling is not a committee decision and your growth is not a group project. Some of the most important seasons of your life will be misunderstood, misinterpreted, and even minimized by people who are not meant to see what God is building within you. And that is not a sign to talk louder, defend harder, or over-explain. It is a sign that your voice is meant to be used for purpose, not permission. Explaining yourself becomes a habit when you've spent too long in environments where your value was questioned, or your identity was challenged, or your evolution made others uncomfortable. You start to feel like you owe the world a reason for every step you take in faith, every boundary you set for your peace, every door you close to protect your healing, and every leap you make toward the future God has been whispering into your soul. But the truth is that explanations often come from insecurity, not clarity. They come from fear that someone's misunderstanding of you might somehow define you. They come from the subtle belief that people can validate or invalidate what God placed inside you. There comes a point where constant explaining keeps you stuck in emotional negotiations with people who were never supposed to be part of the conversation. You start dimming your light so it does not blind them. You start shrinking your dreams so they do not feel threatened. You start editing your testimony so they do not misjudge your journey. And the more you try to justify your growth, the more you delay your becoming. Silence, on the other hand, is not weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is confidence. Silence is the decision to let the fruit speak louder than the explanation. Because when God is the one leading you, He will produce evidence that does not need your commentary. He will open doors that make your explanations irrelevant. He will elevate you in ways that render your clarity optional. When you walk with God, your results become your response. Stop explaining why you are healing. Healing is holy work. Stop explaining why you are distancing yourself from chaos. Peace is a divine priority. Stop explaining why you no longer tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional manipulation. Stop explaining why you no longer operate in survival mode. Freedom demands a different language. Stop explaining why certain relationships no longer fit. Transformation rearranges your connections. Stop explaining why you stepped into a calling that feels bigger than you. Faith has never needed to make sense to spectators. Every time you explain yourself to the wrong audience, you drain energy that God intended for your assignment. You trade clarity for confusion. You give weight to opinions that were never meant to carry authority in your life. And you risk altering your path to accommodate people who won't be walking with you in the next season anyway. Not everyone who witnessed your past is meant to accompany you into your purpose. Some people can only understand you at the level of the version you used to be. Trying to explain your growth to them is like speaking a new language to someone who insists on hearing the old one. There are seasons when God will intentionally hide what He is doing in you, not because you are unworthy, but because the work is sacred. Not because you are unprepared, but because exposure too early can create interference. Sometimes God keeps the details quiet so He can develop you without distraction. And when that happens, explanations become interruptions. They create noise in a space where God is building clarity. They invite opinions into a process that requires obedience. They open doors to voices that dilute what God is strengthening within you. Think of how many times you paused your progress because someone questioned your decision, challenged your growth, or misunderstood your motives. Think of how often you felt compelled to break down your heart's reasoning to people who were not even listening with intention. Think of how many moments you lost trying to convince someone to see your transformation when God was the one who authored it. There is a liberation that comes when you stop performing for understanding and start aligning with purpose. When you stop explaining, you reclaim your power, you reclaim your clarity, you reclaim your pace, you reclaim your identity from the expectations of others. You learn to move without needing applause. You learn to obey God without needing approval. You learn to trust the voice within you more than the noise around you. And the more you walk in that freedom, the less you feel the urge to narrate your every step. The people who are meant to walk with you won't need constant explanations. They will discern your growth by the fruit. They will witness your evolution without demanding a dissertation. They will support your decisions even when they do not fully understand them. Your tribe will not drain you. They will cover you in prayer, cheer for you in silence, and give you space to grow without demanding receipts of your intentions. And when you find that, you stop living life as though you need to prove your worthiness. Growth will always confuse people who benefit from your stagnation. Purpose will always intimidate people who expect you to stay predictable. Calling will always disrupt environments that prefer you comfortable over courageous. When God begins to shift you, some people will try to pull you back to where they can better understand you. They will say you are changing, and you are. They will say you are different, and you should be. They will say you are evolving, and that is exactly what obedience looks like. When you stop explaining, you give yourself permission to evolve without apology. You give yourself permission to rise without needing an audience. You give yourself permission to follow God even when the path is misunderstood. And you begin to understand that your calling was never built on explanations. It was built on obedience, surrender, and faith. Focusing on God is not just a spiritual discipline. It is a realignment of your entire life. It is the moment you shift your gaze from the noise of the world to the voice that has never failed you. Even in the seasons where you didn't fully recognize his hand, when you focus on God, you begin to realize how much of your energy has been spent trying to earn validation from places that could never give you peace. You start to recognize that the anxiety, the fear, the comparisons, the constant seeking of approval, none of those things originated from God. They were borrowed burdens picked up while trying to navigate a world that values visibility more than purpose, applause more than alignment, and performance more than authenticity. But God invites you into a different rhythm, a quieter rhythm, one that allows you to hear yourself again, hear him again, and move in ways that feel like truth instead of pressure. Focusing on God means choosing clarity when confusion is readily available. It means trusting that the same God who guided you through past battles is the same God leading you to new territory. It means letting go of the idea that you need to manipulate outcomes, manage people's opinions, or manufacture opportunities. When your eyes are fixed on God, you stop chasing what was never meant to hold your destiny. You stop trying to force doors open that God closed to protect you. You stop giving emotional real estate to people who cannot steward your heart. Focusing on God resets your priorities, reorders your desires, and reveals what was distracting you from your assignment. One of the greatest challenges in focusing on God is learning to quiet the internal noise that competes for your attention. The doubts, the insecurities, the echoes of past failure, the memories of who you used to be. There is always something trying to pull you away from God's perspective and back into a mindset shaped by fear. But focus is a discipline. Focus is a choice you make daily, sometimes moment by moment. You wake up and decide that God will have the first place in your thoughts, the final say in your choices, and the deepest influence over your identity. When you commit to that posture, you start to feel a shift, a settling in your spirit, a new strength in your steps, a confidence that does not come from how life looks, but from knowing who holds your life. As you focus on God, you begin to understand the difference between movement and progress. Not every opportunity is meant to be pursued. Not every invitation is aligned with your purpose. Not every open door leads to destiny. When your focus is scattered, you become busy instead of effective. You fill your schedule but empty your spirit. You achieve milestones but remain disconnected from meaning. But when your focus is on God, you move with intention. You become sensitive to what is for you and what is simply a distraction dressed as possibility. You learn to say no without guilt, to wait without anxiety, and to act without hesitation when God gives you the green light. Focusing on God also means letting him transform the way you see yourself, because God does not speak to you based on your mistakes. He speaks to you based on your potential. He does not remind you of what broke you. He reminds you of what he can rebuild within you. When you focus on God, you hear the truth of who you are, not the lies that life tried to attach to your identity. You understand that you are chosen even when you feel overlooked. You understand that you are growing even when you feel behind. You understand that you are supported by God's strength even when your own strength feels insufficient. Your identity becomes anchored instead of fragile, grounded instead of drifting, secure instead of dependent on the shifting opinions of others. One of the most transformative results of focusing on God is the way it alters your emotional responses. Situations that once triggered anxiety now reveal opportunities for faith. Conflicts that once made you defensive now become invitations to operate from peace. Disappointments that once made you question your worth now remind you to trust God's timing. Focusing on God doesn't remove the challenges, but it reframes them. It gives you a divine perspective, one that allows you to see setbacks as setups, detours as protection, and delays as preparation. You become less shaken by what happens around you because you are rooted in who stands within you. When you focus on God, you stop needing the world to confirm what God already established. The validation you used to crave becomes irrelevant. The opinions you once feared lose their power. You stop performing for acceptance and start walking in identity. This is where real freedom begins. You're no longer motivated by the pressure to impress. You're motivated by the desire to obey. You're no longer driven by insecurity. You're guided by vision. You stop trying to prove yourself and start positioning yourself for what God is doing next. Focusing on God will also reveal areas of your life that require pruning. Not every habit, environment, or relationship can remain when you elevate. Some connections drain your spirit. Some behaviors block your growth. Some mindsets limit your capacity. As God sharpens your focus, He begins to highlight what is holding you back. And although pruning can feel painful, it is always purposeful. God removes what keeps you small so He can make room for what will take you higher. He separates you from distractions so He can attach you destiny. He reshapes you so you can carry the weight of the blessings you've been praying for. The more you focus on God, the more you recognize how gentle He is with your journey. He does not expect perfection. He desires connection. He is not waiting for you to have everything figured out. He is waiting for you to lean into Him. He knows where you came from. He understands what you carry, and He sees where you are going. When you focus on Him, you begin to feel that assurance in your bones. You recognize that you are not navigating life alone. You have guidance. You have wisdom. You have grace covering places where your strength runs out. Focusing on God becomes the ultimate act of trust. It means surrendering the illusion of control and choosing to believe that God's vision for your life is better than anything you could design on your own. It means allowing His whisper to be louder than your fears, His promises to be stronger than your doubts, and His presence to be more real than your circumstances. You learn to navigate uncertainty with confidence because your confidence does not come from the path. It comes from the one who leads you. Staying humble and winning quietly is a discipline that goes against everything the world teaches you about success. The world tells you to announce every move, broadcast every milestone, and make sure people see you shining. But humility teaches you that real elevation is not about showcasing your progress. It is about stewarding it. When you learn to win quietly, you begin to understand that your success is not a performance. It is a process. It is a sacred partnership between you and God, one that does not require an audience to be authentic or powerful. Humility anchors you. It keeps your heart in check while God expands your territory. It protects you from believing that you are the source of what only God could have orchestrated. When you stay humble, you learn to differentiate between attention and assignment. Attention is loud, temporary, and often rooted in ego. Assignment is quiet, purposeful, and rooted in obedience. Humility keeps you focused on the assignment. It reminds you that your gifts, talents, and breakthroughs are not just for you. They are a reflection of someone greater at work in your life. And when you carry that awareness, you stop feeling the need to prove anything to anyone. You stop chasing spotlight moments and start seeking God-led moments. You stop striving for applause and start striving for impact. Winning quietly teaches you discipline. It teaches you to build without broadcasting, to grow without announcing, and to evolve without needing constant affirmation. You begin to see that the most significant growth often happens where no one is watching. Seeds do not sprout in the open, they develop underground. Roots do not form in public, they strengthen in hidden places. In the same way, God often develops your character in private so that when He elevates you, you can handle the weight of what comes with it. Quiet seasons are not punishment, they are preparation. They protect you from premature exposure and allow you to develop the maturity needed to sustain the blessings you've been praying for. Staying humble also shields you from the trap of comparison. When your wins are quiet, you stop measuring your progress against anyone else's timeline. You no longer feel pressure to achieve what someone else has achieved or present your life in a way that competes with others. You learn to honor your own journey. You learn to appreciate slow growth, hidden growth, internal growth, the kind that doesn't always look impressive on the outside, but is transforming you on the inside. Humility gives you the space to celebrate progress that doesn't need to be posted, praised, or publicized. Winning quietly also reveals who is truly for you. When your success is not loudly advertised, only the people who genuinely care about your well-being will notice the shifts in you. Only those who are spiritually connected to your journey will discern your growth. It filters out those who were only interested in proximity to your shine rather than connection to your soul. Quiet wins expose shallow relationships and strengthen God-ordained ones. They remind you that the people you need in your next season are not those who are impressed by your progress, but those who pray for your purpose. Humility softens your heart while strengthening your character. It reminds you that every breakthrough is a blessing, not an entitlement. It keeps you grounded even when life elevates you. It teaches you to handle success with grace, generosity, and gratitude. You become someone who does not need to be celebrated to continue walking in purpose. You become someone who does not need to be seen to stay consistent. Humility allows you to move with quiet confidence, a confidence that comes from knowing that God is guiding your steps, not the crowd. Winning quietly also teaches you patience. Some victories take time to manifest publicly. Some prayers are answered in stages, not sudden moments. When you're committed to humility, you do not rush the process just for the sake of showcasing the result. You trust that timing matters. You trust that God knows when to reveal what He has been building within you. You trust that visibility without maturity can become vulnerability. And because of that trust, you remain patient, consistent, and surrendered. There is also a deep emotional freedom that comes with winning quietly. You no longer feel the pressure to explain your success, justify your decisions, or seek validation for your growth. You no longer feel obligated to update people on the progress of your healing, your dreams, or your journey. Your life becomes less about managing perceptions and more about cultivating authenticity. You create space to grow without judgment, to fail without shame, and to rise without fanfare. Quiet wins allow you to be fully human while God makes you full. Staying humble and winning quietly teaches you to let God reveal you instead of trying to reveal yourself. When God reveals you, no one can deny the transformation. No one can diminish the grace on your life. No one can discredit what God has ordained. God's timing does not require your promotion. It requires your posture. It requires you to stay teachable, grateful, and obedient. You learn to keep your heart low even when your blessings rise high. You learn to stay centered even when life expands around you. You learn to remember where you came from even as God prepares you for where you are going. Winning quietly also brings peace. You are no longer entangled in the pressure of being visible. You do not feel compelled to curate your life for public consumption. You avoid the noise that comes with too many opinions and too much exposure. You protect your mental and spiritual well-being by keeping your wins in the hands of God instead of in the spotlight. Peace becomes your reward. Stillness becomes your strength. Contentment becomes your posture. Humility teaches you that success without character is instability. Quiet wins teach you that elevation without grounding is dangerous. Together, they shape you into someone who can be trusted with greater influence, greater responsibility, and greater purpose. You become someone who is not easily swayed by praise or discouraged by silence. You operate from conviction instead of ego, from alignment instead of ambition. You carry your wins with grace because your heart is anchored in something eternal instead of something temporary. When you stay humble and win quietly, you give God room to get the glory. You allow the testimony to unfold without your interference. You allow your life to be a reflection of divine alignment rather than human performance. You become a living example of what happens when obedience outweighs ego, when character is valued over clout, and when purpose becomes more important than popularity.